Welcome to episode 144 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Great George and More episode of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host. I'm with my co-host Josh F1. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil. It's been an interesting, lean weekend of racing. We only had one race this weekend, after, all these weeks of NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar. Now it's just F1, and now we're, on the very back end of the year. But, we had a first time winner finally here this year, both for the season and first career win. So, glad to see George Russell get his, first win with Mercedes. And, it was a rather interesting weekend of racing. And, for once, we were actually wrong on our F1 predictions.
Yeah, we've been picking fish lips for most of the year and been right. Who will see what happens with that in regards to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But George Russell becomes a second first-time winner in 2022 with his victory in the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, aka the Brazilian Grand Prix. Won the sprint race the day before after spinning out in qualifying and beaching his car, which was an interesting qualifying, which saw Kevin Magnussen qualify on pole. So he is listed as a pole sitter for the Brazilian Grand Prix of record. Interesting day that saw Mercedes get their first 1-2 of the season. Also have Max Verstappen kind of go back to being what he has been for a long time in his career when he has to race anybody. When he was racing Lewis Hamilton, and then his actions at the end of the race in regards to his teammate Sergio Perez, who's in a battle for second in the championship. So plenty to talk about within the race. Lots of aggro going on amongst soon-to-be former teammates, current teammates, points battles, but an interesting race. One of the races this year that actually had a lot of overtaking, and it seemed to have a lot of action the whole entire weekend. So it was nice to see that here for Brazilian Grand Prix. We'll go into all of that. We're going to go and do something different because we saw it on Twitter, and because NBA, they did their 75th anniversary team after they had the top 50, and based on that, that's where NASCAR got their 50 greatest drivers gimmick in 1998. So somebody talked about who would you add on Twitter. I can't remember who exactly, so I'm unfortunately
I think it was like NASCAR Man or somebody like that.
Yeah, NASCAR. Yeah, that sounds about right. So credit to NASCAR Man for bringing it up. Who would you add to that list? And so Josh and I are going to go and do that. We're going to, some of the drivers might surprise you, some of the choices and all. So I figure we're going to have a few different ones. Most of them I think will be the same, but we will see about that. In the roundup, we'll discuss the NHRA finale at Pomona, which saw champions crowned in 3 of the 4 pro categories, and some different winners as well. Bahrain, the results of the 8 hours of Bahrain to end the World Endurance Championship season, and rookie test that took place. Rally Japan, the season finale in the WRC. Championships had already been locked up in drivers and constructors, but still racing for pride there. And then we'll preview the F2 season finale at Abu Dhabi. There will be some drivers in FP1 that have F2 connections, and then there's other people that will be moving up, and et cetera, et cetera. In the NFL, Week 10 review, positive to a point for myself in regards to my actual team. My fantasy teams are a disaster. Josh's fantasy team is kind of on the edge, needs IDP to show up here. Jonathan Allen, as Washington is driving, so if he can give it to Brian Robinson, that'd be nice. not going to win in the league I have them in, but it would be nice to make it interesting. We'll get into that. The Jaguars got anal dry from Kermit the Frog and company, but really that was going to happen. They put up a fight, put up a lot of points. So it wasn't like Trevor Lawrence was a liability yesterday. They were able to score. So, it kind of shows that maybe Kansas City can be beat if you scheme the right way. Buffalo did show that prior to when Buffalo started melting down here recently. So we'll get into all that. We'll talk about our teams for next week in terms of fantasy, but then also regular. We will preview the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which will be Sebastian Vettel's last race of his illustrious career, 299th and final start of his career, 4-time world champion, 53 Grand Prix wins, which leaves him third all-time in victories, just 2 ahead of Alain Prost, 12 ahead of Ayrton Senna. So one of the greatest drivers of his time, winning 4 consecutive world championships. You look at, in the history of motorsports, people winning consecutive championships. Right now, you have Brad Sweet in World of Outlaws. You have, and other than that, everyone thinks about Jimmy, in NASCAR with 5 in a row. There's other people over time, of course, and that have done that, and Michael Schumacher and Lewis, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll talk about moments of positives that Sebastian Vettel has brought to the sport, and but it looks like what we see postseason test with new drivers coming in, and then some of the young drivers that'll be making their debut. Josh will do his sim segment, and then we'll close the deal. So yeah, Sao Paulo Grand Prix, Brazilian Grand Prix. I don't know why they started changing everything into like it's like some of these Grand Prix names are just really stupid. Just you should have left it alone. It's really Imola, Miami, and and Mexico City and Sao Paulo. Those are the 4 that they just should change back or change it to something different. Otherwise, all the other ones are fine. But George Russell had a great weekend, won his first career Formula One race on the back of winning the sprint race the day before. Lewis Hamilton finished 1.529 seconds behind in second to give Mercedes a 1-2 finish. Carlos Sainz gets a third place finish again at Brazil. Second time he's done that there, this time in a Ferrari instead of a McLaren. Charles Leclerc begging to get on the podium and get that extra points, but was rebuffed, finished 4th. Sainz had a 5 grid spot penalty because of power unit change. And he was able to get back up there, and great job by him. Fred Alonso finished 5th after plenty of aggro with his teammate and fellow butthurt douchebag Max Verstappen finished 6th ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. Esteban Ocon finished 8th, Valtteri Bottas 9th, and Lance Stroll rounded out the top 10. Sebastian Vettel just fell outside the top 10 at the end of the race because of tires and all that. Yuki Tsunoda, in a weird scenario, was the only car that was lapped, and F1 didn't take any responsibility for it, which is typical. Lando Norris had a mechanical issue, which ended up kind of altering the race because of his inability to park the car in a decent spot. Then you have Daniel Ricciardo crashing, bumping Kevin Magnussen, who was a pole sitter on Saturday for the sprint race, and then running him over when Kevin Magnussen rolled back instead of hitting the brake because he didn't want to be in the traffic. and they both were knocked out of the race. Kevin Magnussen was left stranded on the track for most of the day. I mean, the story is George Russell. He's been building up. He's been the more consistent driver this year. And honestly, he's going to be the second driver who's legitimately beaten Lewis Hamilton in a season. And you consider how great Lewis Hamilton is. He's only the second driver, really, because I'm not going to give the amount of bullshit that went on in 2016 that allowed Nico Rosberg to somehow or another skate by and win that world championship. You're not going to make an argument for me that's going to make me believe that wasn't, that wasn't bullshit. Because right now, Lewis Hamilton would have 8 or 9 championships under that law if you're going to come up with that kind of cockamamie logic. But Jenson Button beat Lewis Hamilton, and I can deal with it. And I think that's maybe why Jenson Button's one of the only people that actually talks about, one of the pundits that actually has positive things to say about Lewis Hamilton, because most of them are full of shit. And then George. But George has been more consistent this year. He's been able to deal with how bad this car has been. Yes, he's made mistakes. Yes, he gets on the radio and doesn't sound so great. But this weekend, he was in control. And he showed why he's the future of Mercedes Formula One program. And, even having to battle Verstappen on Saturday, having to battle Ferraris on Saturday, and then having to battle Sergio Perez on Sunday, and eventually his teammate, a 7-time world champion with under 3 Formula One wins at essentially a second home track now. I think U.S. Grand Prix used to be it, but now I think really the Brazilian Grand Prix is like his second home race. Honorary Brazilian citizen now, Sir Lewis Hamilton. But it's really about George Russell, Josh. Great job by him. There's plenty of people in the grid talk that are not fans of him, but I've been a fan of his because I look at him and he has potential to really do a lot of work. He's an F2 champion. He battled for 3 years driving around in a Williams. He took that car to second place, got him points, big points last year, and you look at where they are this year, it's like night and day. So credit to George Russell for what he did all weekend, minus, running off the track on Friday. But to go and get that first career victory. First-time winner this year, of course, Carlos Sainz at the British Grand Prix being the other. But great job by George likely locking up 4th in the Drivers' Championship. But I have to confirm that. But yeah, more than likely is going to finish 4th in the Drivers' Championship unless some miracle happens. And Lewis wins at Abu Dhabi with a fastest lap and George doesn't score. George Russell will finish 4th in the World Championship. So hats off to him there, Josh.
Yeah, hats off to George Russell getting first career, maiden win in Formula One. It's been a long time coming for him, coming through the ranks the last couple of years with Williams being, the test reserve driver for Mercedes. And, he's been in that program for several years now. And, now this is his first time this year being in Mercedes full time. We saw what he could do, all the way back in 2020, the one race where Lewis Hamilton was out sick with
secure Grand Prix.
Yep, with COVID, and George Russell had a chance to win that Grand Prix actually, and then if I remember correctly, it was strategy mistake by Mercedes that cost him that victory there. But yeah,
I think it was it was I'm not so sure about strategy. He was in the lead. Him and Bottas were on the front row. He passed Bottas on the start, and he was in the lead. I think they pitted him, but there might have been some issue there, and then they pitted him again. They had a slow pit stop. I think one of the slow
pit stop issue or something,
which is typical Mercedes.
Yeah.
And then the second issue, he cut a tire and had to go back. and drove back to get a couple of points.
Yeah, it was, that's pretty much what happened there. But he also just was really 2021 also with Williams. You saw some of the things that he could do in that car, and you saw his potential, and it he had some close moments there. I mean, notably, he had the race. I forget if it wasn't the Belgian Grand Prix, but because he finished second there, but there was another race where he made a mistake and crashed, and everybody felt bad for him, and that was I think a lot of people became George Russell fans that day. But talking about this race, the Brazilian Sao Paulo Grand Prix, whatever you want to call it, I mean, really, just from qualifying, onward, he's able to go out and have a good car. Of course, won the sprint race, and was able to put it on pole after that. But the change of pace, I guess. Mercedes, they've continued to develop their car, whereas Red Bull, Ferrari, they've largely stopped developing their car now, and they've moved on to 2023 and started focusing on the development there. And Mercedes, I guess now for 2022, begun to close the gap, and you saw the pace that they had throughout the entire weekend, not just in qualifying, but throughout all the practice sessions and the race. It was clear that they had the best cars. I thought maybe Lewis might actually win in the middle of the race. He had the lead a couple of times in the race, but George Russell just had I think he just had a faster car at the end of the day, and he was able to get the job done. At the end of the race, Lewis had a little bit of pressure on him at the last couple of laps, but wasn't able to close the gap really, and George was able to drive away, get the victory. So kind of a preview of what we might see in 2 or 3 years. Once I don't know how long Lewis is going to be in Formula One. I imagine probably maybe 2 to 3 years at most, probably. Although he probably could do it longer if he wanted to, but he's getting older and probably wants to start doing other things in his life. But George Russell is likely going to be the top guy at Mercedes not very long from now, and expect him to be competing up there for race victories, for podiums, along with guys like Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. So those three guys, I think as far as Formula One goes, I think they're probably the future as far as people who you think can be championship contenders, and who will probably get the majority of race winning victories on a week to week basis. So just a preview of what's to come, and also just a display of talent from George Russell that we've seen over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I think the talent is undeniable with him, but now he's been able to close the deal, and having those 2 victories, I think, is just going to open him up, and he is going to relax, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity. I'm not so sure that'll come up this weekend per se, but for 2023, it gives him a lot of hope for sure in terms of just short term, more short term than the long term. I think long term, we know what they're trying to do at Mercedes with him. So we got through that. I mean, Lewis Hamilton gets another second place finish after having contact with Max Verstappen. That was off a restart. I thought George kind of sandbagged Lewis there in that situation. After that, during that first restart, waiting as long as he did to go and make the restart, when they had further restart later in the day after the Lando Norris deal. Lewis was able to at least make a gap, and then it was just strictly a battle between those 2 guys. Max and Lewis, of course, with the way they've raced each other, they don't really see eye to eye in racing. Max seems to believe that he owns the road, and nobody can, if he puts his car there, then you are either going to decide to wreck or get out of the way. And I think there's 19 drivers that do that for him, and there's one driver that won't, and that's Lewis Hamilton. Now, on the flip side of that, you got Lewis has had aggro with drivers over the years because he's an aggressive driver, and he has shown a willingness to put his car in places that other people won't. But I look at over his career, outside of people who are jealous of him, which is Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, and Nico Rosberg, who are all have hard-ons, and they are all hard-ons and have SPS or something because Lewis is better than him. He's been able to race around world champions without a problem. He's been able to race with Sebastian Vettel for Vettel's entire career, same way they came in at the same time. He's been able to race with Jenson Button, who's a world champion. He's been able to race with other drivers that are legendary drivers, the great Michael Schumacher, albeit he wasn't the same kind of guy. Has he made mistakes? Has he done things that are probably questionable? Definitely. But the difference is he has awareness. Fundamentally, and that's where this all ends up here. And Josh, I'll throw it to you in regards to this as well. But, Max Verstappen shows a general lack of awareness. I thought about it yesterday. I'm like, you know what? He's just like Keebler Gibbs. He literally thinks that he's God's gift to motorsports. He has nobody holding him accountable at Red Bull because, Karen Horner and One-Eyed Marco, lick his balls and kiss his taint. And then you have his useless family that are pathetic and are enablers. And then on top of it, his girlfriend is a whore whose father is a racist prick. So it's like they're racist, they're stupid, they're ignorant, and he's an ignoramus too. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't think he's going to get killed. Good for him. Doesn't think he's going to get killed. Keep on going with Lewis Hamilton. He ain't going to be winning 15 races next year if he thinks he's going to race people like that. And he thought it was okay. He basically copped to saying, I did it intentionally because I knew that it would cost him the win. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. When you're going out there and you're saying that you don't care if you crash into somebody else, and you're supposed to be a representative of the sport, being a two-time world champion, albeit I would say two-time in air quotes world champion. I mean, that was one of the two incidents with him. The other being, which is something we'll get into in regards to the points here in a moment. But, what were your thoughts on the incident, Josh? And, I said this on Grid Talk yesterday. I thought that they were going to give the penalty to Lewis. I figured they were going to just say he didn't leave him enough room, give him the penalty. And then Max's penalty was having to go and get his wing replaced and do all that. I was surprised with that because usually those kind of things go against Lewis, same way as safety cars always seem to go against Lewis and his strategy too. But what were your thoughts on that incident between the two guys that are theoretically the two best drivers in Formula One?
Yeah, I think with Max Verstappen, it was probably an over-aggressive move at the beginning of the race, and he probably didn't have to make that pass in that corner. And you talk about him being similar to Ty Gibbs in a way. I think you said it a long time ago. He's basically kind of like Kyle Busch, or early days Kyle Busch, and a lot of similarities there with how he's just overly aggressive, and Max kind of thinks he owns the road. He's been a driver that kind of expects, does a lot of taking but doesn't do a lot of giving. And that pass, to try to go side by side in the apex of turn 2, probably not the best place to pass at that moment. And got got into Lewis Hamilton, actually looking at the replay, I actually thought that Lewis sustained quite a bit of damage there, and I guess it did probably affect his ability to go out and win the race overall. But I actually thought that Lewis was done after that contact. Just I guess like the way it looked, and same kind of for Verstappen as well. Just because usually those types of contacts end up hurting your car and everything. But they both were able to kind of continue on, and Verstappen having to go get a pit stop for repairs and everything, but he's able to still kind of come back and make up for it. Controversy with his teammate and everything, and Hamilton, he fell back to around 8th place, but then he's able to actually get up into the lead after that. So just proves how good that car was, but just wasn't good enough for Lewis Hamilton, just not quite enough to actually go out and win. And just poor decision making by Max Verstappen, and I'm sure maybe he will learn, but for right now, I guess it's typical of his behavior and everything. But he's been quite an aggressive guy over the years, and we'll have to see. And now he's a double world champion in Formula One, so imagine that at some point I have to be able to understand to, I guess, be more aware of your situations and everything. But we'll see next year, and everything is expect Mercedes and Ferrari to be able to catch up to Red Bull, and how aggressive will he be and everything. And you just talk about him racing like that and not being able to win 15 races. Well, wouldn't expect him to win 15 races like that again, because I think things are going to regress back to the mean, and probably we'll see a little bit more reasonable wins. Not going to put a number, maybe 5 or 6 wins or something like that for Verstappen. So, and Mercedes and Ferrari get 5 wins apiece, something like that, which would be a fairly competitive year if that did happen next year. But definitely expect him to be a little bit more challenged next year and have to adapt to the situations. Since it's going to he'll be challenged a lot more. So obviously this type of racing is not sustainable over long term. Might help in the moment, but over long term probably not as sustainable to be able to be that aggressive like that and make contact and stuff. So he's gonna have to figure it out in order to play the long game against his opponents at Mercedes and at Ferrari.
Speaking of opponents with Mercedes, Ferrari, and even his teammate Sergio Checo Perez, another big talking point is the points battle for second in the World Championship. Right now, after the results of yesterday's race, Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez are tied at 290 points with 1 race to go. Both drivers were with radio contact, either were asking for, at least in Leclerc's case, and in Verstappen's case, told to cede position. And in neither case did that happen. Ferrari has come out and said, I mean, the reality with Ferrari was it was for a podium, and he had made a big gap. Carlos Sainz, he had one of the fastest cars. Honestly, if he didn't have the engine penalty, power unit penalty, he could have been a contender. He had a really fast car. He had a fast car in qualifying. He was fast in Saturday during the sprint, finished second, had to take a 5 grid spot penalty, pit stops. He had a what is it? What do you call a tear off? Get into the right rear brake, whatever brake cake pan, whatever they like to call it. Their brake ducting, the way they encased the brake, and it was causing it smoking and a fire. and he had to pit early, and that basically reset his race, and he was chasing the whole way, and by the end he was able to get back up to third. So, it could have went different for Carlos Sainz, for sure. He could have had a real chance to finish second yesterday, or maybe contend for the win. But in regards to that, Ferrari at one point were looking pretty bad for constructors, and they might have lost second in constructors yesterday. But then they turned it around, got to third and fourth, and now they are 19 points ahead of Mercedes with one race to go. So there are other battles that I'll bring up. We can go and talk about. I mean, other than that, Lewis and Carlos are battling for fifth. There's 6 points between the two of them. Ocon and Alonso, who there's plenty of acrimony there. There's only 5 points between those two. Vettel is a point ahead of Ricciardo, but I have a hard time believing Ricciardo's going to score points. Magnussen is ahead of Gasly by 2 points, but I doubt Gasly's going to do anything. It really doesn't matter. In regards to teams, Gasly is trying to avoid a race ban because of the stupidity of the penalty point system. I mentioned the Ferrari and Mercedes battle. It's 19 points. McLaren's double DNF basically handed fourth in the constructors to Alpine. They're 19 points ahead. Alfa Romeo's 5 points ahead of Aston Martin, but Aston Martin in the last, 5 Grand Prix have 25 points, while Alfa Romeo have 3. So if you go back to last 6 Grand Prix, it's 25-4. So there is a possibility. Aston Martin has shown pace. They're going to need a little bit more. Alfa Romeo really did all of their points scoring up to Canada, and it's been pretty barren ever since. Aston Martin's they started on the back foot early in the year, and their point scores have been very minor for most of the year, but they've made ground. Haas is up by 2 points. They benefited from Kevin Magnussen's pole and finishing with 1 point in the sprint to give them a 2-point lead over AlphaTauri going into this last race. So, I guess that's the last piece before we get into some news. I mentioned Ocon and Fred, and we mentioned the team orders thing in regards to Max. He justified it, saying that, Sergio Perez cost him a chance in qualifying at Monaco. Supposedly, there was news that Sergio Perez copped to wrecking intentionally at Monaco in qualifying, which is not the first time that's happened. Michael Schumacher's done it. Nico Rosberg's done it. So it's it's a thing. So they don't bother to handle it when it happens. Why do you think so if they're not going to handle it at that moment, it's happened now. Now you're going to say there's at least 3 instances of this that's happened in the last 20 years. Maybe you should go and look at that sort of shit. Formula One, if you want to talk about integrity. Formula One, because they're American owned, seem to be more like NASCAR with the way they officiate and some of the decisions they make. They let the Williams unlap themselves, but they didn't unlap Yuki Tsunoda because of some stupid scoring thing, and then justified it and left him basically a lap down. He lost 2 positions to the Williams team when he should have been able to unlap himself. But whatever. It's AlphaTauri. You can't really expect AlphaTauri to do things the right way. So, your thoughts right now as on what happened yesterday for Perez and Leclerc, for their battle for second in the World Championship, and also for Ferrari and Mercedes, because I think that plays a part into what we're going to be discussing here later.
Yeah, just with Perez alone, goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, Verstappen and Verstappen's had a history of doing this, in the past. Like, go back a couple of years when he was teammates with Daniel Ricciardo, and he refused to. I think he refused to give Ricciardo a tow in qualifying. And after the team had asked him to help give a tow to Ricciardo, and he refused because the previous week it was Ricciardo that had given Verstappen a tow, and I guess he wasn't going to return the favor. And that's just typical of Verstappen, and then being a teammate in this situation didn't allow his teammate to pass, and he'd give the position back to Perez, but then he ended up not doing it. And I don't ask him again, and he says he's gonna continue to race, and it doesn't allow Perez to get back. And just unfortunate situation there, and we'll see what that ends up leading to for Perez's future at Red Bull, and if it gets put in question or not. But just a typical move, I guess, like we talked about earlier with Verstappen, with his tactics. Racing is also, there's his teammate tactic as well. And, he's just hasn't been I guess in that situation, not a good teammate. And then on the other hand, I saw a thing on Formula One Reddit that I guess he was supporting his sim racing teammates on Twitch, and he was commenting and saying some stuff. And, he was commenting on their stream while he was at the Brazilian Grand Prix race weekend, and which is interesting. He's supporting the video game teammates, but not the real life teammates. So I don't know what that's all about, but that's how he is, I guess. But just a bad situation there. And then you can talk about Charles Leclerc. Just a opportunity for Charles Leclerc to also get more points and potentially finish in second. But he him and the rest of the Ferrari team, they've just been kind of all over the place, really. And Leclerc's had opportunities, I feel like, over the year, the course of the year to be better than this, but Leclerc also had the incident with Lando Norris today, so it's not really their fault, that they're in that situation in Brazil. But he got punted in the wall, and then fell to 18th to get a new wing in that, and definitely hurt his ability to get a good finish. But just bad situation for Leclerc, although he did come back to finish in fourth, still finishing behind his teammate and everything. So, if he doesn't get touched by Lando, does he finish on the podium, or maybe even potentially competed for the race victory? As it remains to be seen. But it's definitely a tough situation, and it's going to be very close for second in the point standings, I think, for between Leclerc and between Sergio Perez. So we'll have to see what happens here late in the last race, if they're able to settle and find something. But just missed opportunity, I think, on both ends, whether it be their own fault or because it was taken away by somebody else. So just a unfortunate deal there. And also, I think you talked about Ferrari. So Ferrari's up 19 points over Mercedes in the constructors. So even with the victory for Mercedes, they still are behind, and I guess there's still a chance that they could get next weekend they could get something, but it's going to be tough for them. I think you'd have to see both Ferraris take themselves out for a chance for Mercedes to have a chance to win, or finish ahead of them in the constructors. But I think Ferrari's probably got it locked up over Mercedes, but what remains to be seen if it actually does happen, because you never know, they both could have misfortune in the last race of the season, and Mercedes is able to somehow overtake them. And I think, that'd have to be like at least, a podium for Lewis and George Russell again, and or one of them win the race and the other finish alongside on the podium. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see the last race play out for the rest of the constructors champion, or title, and then also the drivers championship. How second and third and beyond are gonna end up lining up. After the checkered flag waves in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way they handled it now, the PR issues that Red Bull have in regards to that whole situation is not great. I mean, you brought up how Sergio Perez and his future. I kind of feel like Red Bull is building their situation. They signed Enzo Fittipaldi so they can get the PR of Emerson Fittipaldi sitting there being a stan at 900 years old for his grandson. And then they could also basically have Nick de Vries as a Dutch driver, an actual Dutch driver, get picked up to drive for the actual Red Bull team and roll over for Max as a teammate. Yuki Tsunoda would definitely be a rollover because he is not good enough. Largely because he wasn't ready. He needed more time in Formula 2, and I think he would have been able to do better. I would venture to say Iwasa, who's in Formula 2 at the moment, at least for what I know, he's a better talent, I think, than Yuki Tsunoda. But will he get a chance because of Red Bull's great driver development program is to be determined. Checo, at the end of the day, I believe, has better racecraft and more likely, and he has a better car, but the fact is car doesn't suit him. Leclerc has a car that suits him, but Ferrari's Ferrari. They were the only team that went out in Q3 on inners or full whatever, and it was still dry, and they were the only one that went out on inners. They didn't bring him back in after a sighting lap. They let him make a whole lap, and then on the second lap they brought him in, so he ended up qualifying 9th or 10th or whatever the hell he did. So it was really stupid. Ferrari had issues the whole day in qualifying. They are their own worst enemy. If the team doesn't F up, whether it's with pit stops or strategy, the drivers will F up because they'll crash, or it'll make some mistake, or they'll have a technical mechanical issue. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll get into that more later on. Going into some other news, I mean, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon, now they're not getting along, but I mean, it's typical Fernando Alonso. He's a douchebag, and he suffers from SPS. He's on his third or fourth stop at this team, the Enstone team, and any teammate that races him hard, he gets butthurt about it. He got butthurt about it when Lewis did it to him. He got butthurt about it, and he's had a hard on for him ever since. Esteban Ocon drives him hard, and Esteban Ocon drives everybody hard. Is it smart? Not really. But at the end of the day, I get why Esteban Ocon is the way he is. It's a toxic team, to be fair. I think it was brought up, Tom Downey brought it up on the Grid Talk as well, where he said how toxic it's become because of Otmar Safnow. Because anywhere he goes, it's usually bad crap is going on. So I agree with that. They don't have a very good situation. I mean, Oscar Piastri at least has been let out of his contract so he can test for McLaren next week after Abu Dhabi. Alonso leaves. But at the end of the day, Fernando Alonso is a douchebag. Yes, he's a great driver and has great talent. In his day, he was really, really good, but and I completely give credit to him. A couple of years with Ferrari basically with one arm tied behind his back, was battling Red Bull and had a chance to win a couple more world championships, which could have reset his whole entire career. But at the end of the day, his own arrogance, stupidity, and douchiness is the reason why he hasn't won a Grand Prix since 2012 and, is still at 2 world championships. And he lost to his teammate after winning 2 consecutive world championships and making a team move, who was a rookie. And said rookie should have beat him, and he should have been the world champion that year. But McLaren fucked it up. So at the end of the day, Fernando Alonso, just like Max Verstappen, can go and lick a freaking herpes full lick balls or whatever. I don't like either of them, and then not both of them are just scumbags. And the media, the Dutch media and the Spanish media, are just as big of a part of the problem with the way Formula One is going as the social media with a lot of the, LCD fan bases. And I say this being a Lewis fan, but there's plenty of LCD Lewis Hamilton fans. There's plenty of LCD Max fans, Fernando Alonso. I mean, Lando Norris is useless. I don't know why the hell people deal with him. He's a tool. At the end of the day, honestly, I think you, Josh, could go and beat him in sim. I know he's a really good sim racer, but I think you could beat him, and it would be funny how he would react to that. I think you could. I mean, I'm not him and
that
Max
will take several years to happen.
Yeah, well, whatever. But the fact is, you're humble about whatever. I mean, you'll humble brag about your Indy 500 win. I get it, but like former guest Tanner Watkins, who has won the Indy 500
I can hang that over Alonso and Verstappen. I have an Indy 500 on. What do you guys have? Fernando came to America to try and win the Indy 500, and he didn't do that. So, and I was able to do it.
And he was in the best. And he was in the best car at Le Mans, in a car that was almost impossible not to win. So he won 2 out of 3, but he's never going to win the Indy 500. So he can suck a dick, just like Max Verstappen. For all the bullshit both of them bring to the table. One piece of news coming out of this weekend is Nico Hulkenberg is going to take over in the second seat at Haas, so there'll be 2 veteran drivers at Haas. Nico Hulkenberg, after 2 or 3 years away, will be back in Formula One trying to get that elusive podium. If a Haas can actually get a podium, that would be something. But then, of course, Kevin Magnussen went out and qualified on pole. So, stranger things have happened on the weekend of Gene Haas's 70th birthday. Did Taylor Heineke fumble the ball and then almost throw an interception there? I think that's what he almost did. It's 14-10 with 5:13 to go in the first half. So Washington at least is making it a game. It's an 11-point spread. So
it's a good throwaway there after fumbling the snap. So
so it was a smart move by Taylor Heineke. There are other quarterbacks that wouldn't be able to do that for sure. So this is a little different. I mean, obviously we're very North American NASCAR centric podcast. We go over all things motorsports, but NASCAR is a big part of what we talk about here. It's how we became friends. One of the reasons why we became friends. And I think NASCAR man brought it up, as you said, 50 greatest drivers took place in 1998 in the 50th year. Now we're going into the 75th year of NASCAR here in 2023. And who should we add to the list? I mean, NBA, as I mentioned earlier in the Open, did that. And of course, the kind of players that they added, the Lebanon James, the Steph Currys, Kevin Durant, Mr.
Lebanon
Miserable.
James.
Yeah, that's whatever. all these people, all these great players that played over time. I forget who else they had there in '98, but I'm trying to. I mean, I don't follow basketball like that anymore. If I did the way I used to, then I would know those players that were in there. But I definitely know the names I have on this list. So, I mean, honestly, you think about it. You were a pretty young kid when in '98, right? So
I was not even watching NASCAR yet in 1998.
yeah, so let's just go and do a wayback machine to 1998 when they named the 50 greatest drivers. Now this is in alphabetical order. They named Bobby Allison, Davey Allison, Buck Baker, Buddy Baker, Jeff Bodine, Neil Bonnet, Red Byron, Jerry Cook, Dale Earnhardt, Ralph Earnhardt, Bill Elliott, Richie Evans, Red Farmer, Tim Flock, AJ Foyt, Harry Gant, Jeff Gordon, Ray Hendrick, Jack Ingram, Ernie Irvin, Bobby Isaac, Dale Jarrett, Ned Jarrett, Junior Johnson, Alan Kwiecki, Terry Labonte, Fred Lorenzen, Tiny Lund, Mark Martin, Herschel McGriff, Cotton Owens, Marvin Panch, Benny Parsons, David Pearson, Richard Petty, Lee Petty, Tim Richmond, Fireball Roberts, Ricky Rudd, Marshall Teague, Herb Thomas, Curtis Turner, Rusty Wallace, Darrell Waltrip, Joe Weatherly, Bob Wellborn, Rex White, Glenn Wood, Cale Yarbrough, and Leroy Yarbrough. And then out of that list, out of that list of 50, 36 of those 50 are currently members of the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So, and there are people that are on the modern era list amongst that group, I think here. Ricky Rudd was a part of it. Oh, I left Larry Phillips out. Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna have to make a change. All right, so that actually works out fine for me. All right. So I'm making a change on the fly here to my list because I voted for him before Larry Phillips to be in the Hall of Fame because he's a legend. The Winston Racing Series. I mean, Roid Rage is on the list
Hall
here.
of Fame voting power.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame. Yeah, you got Neil Bonnet, who is a part of the top 50. Sam Ard, who wasn't a part of the top 50. So we'll get into some of those. Those are 36 of the 50. The greatest drivers are in. As it stands, Ricky Rudd is part of the modern era ballot nominees or whatever. They say they have 3 now, so they're coming out of this list. So it combines drivers, crew chiefs, and or crew chief mechanics and owners. I think those are the 3 different categories essentially now. Just as a connecting it from the past to the present. I mean, right, the list this past year, which sees Herschel McGriff was a part of the 50 greatest drivers. He got elected into the Hall of Fame. Kirk Shelmarine, who was the crew chief for Dale Earnhardt for 4 of his 7 championships, part of the Flying Aces, unsung hero guy, that very underrated crew chief, gets into the Hall of Fame. He wanted to be a race car driver, won races in ARCA, finished in the top 20 in the Daytona 500 in 2006. in an underfunded car. And Matt Kenseth, as Dale Jr. would say. Those three guys are going into the Hall of Fame in January of 2023. The other people that are on the list as of now are Sam Ard, who is a legend in what is now the Xfinity Series, Neil Bonnet, who I know as a great TV broadcaster, but he had a really solid career in the Cup Series as a driver. Tim Brewer, who was a great crew chief, won championships. Jeff Burton, which I have an interesting piece that I learned in my rabbit hole I went down. Carl Edwards, which was even more interesting with the rabbit hole I went down. AJ Foyt, who's one of the 50 greatest drivers in NASCAR history, but he's one of the greatest race car drivers ever lived. Harry Gant, who was part of that top 50 driver list. Harry Hyde, who is one of the most interesting people ever to work in the sport. Banjo Matthews, who legendary mechanic, engine builder, car builder, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Ralph Moody, one half of Hullman and Moody, was great with the Fords and built great race cars, and a lot of drivers won races for them. Larry Phillips, as I mentioned, Winston Racing Series legend. Ricky Rudd, who was part of the 50 greatest drivers. So, I mean, I said 36 of the 50 have been elected to the Hall of Fame. The guys that haven't been, I'm not trying to list them all. I don't even know who the hell Bob Wellborn is. And I'm a racing. I've been into this for God knows how long. For since I was 7 and I'm 37. I've never heard of him. When I saw that name, I didn't know who it says Bob Wellborn NASCAR. It comes up. So, okay. Was a Grand National Series driver. He won the NASCAR convertible division, won his first race at Martinsville in 57, 4 straight wins, and pole position is like. So he was a convertible division champion 3 years in a row and led the convertible division in wins in 58 and 59. He didn't win the championship in 59. And he was the pole sitter for the first Daytona 500. Okay. But, yeah. All right. So, convertible division, he won 3 championships, won 19 races, 87 top 10s in 111 races. He actually won 9 cup races. Okay. Well, what? It says 100. It says best finish. Oh, and the series championship was 4th. Okay. All right. So he finished 4th in the championship. That was his best result. Won 9 cup races, 102 top 10s, 7 poles. Named and he was part of the NMPA Hall of Fame. Okay. All right. So we're learning something new here. So this is an educational portion of the GSP. I mean, I've heard of a lot of the other guys, either because I've seen them, I've read about them, heard stories about them, et cetera, et cetera. Really, I mean, it gives me joy that Ernie was a part of the top 50 just because I was a fan of his. Leroy Yarborough, I remember driving that 98 Ford. Not sure who the owner was, but they have that diecast out there. I mean, Jeff Bodine, people that hate him in the South because he raced Earnhardt hard. He was a great modified driver, and he was good in Cup. He was Hendrick's first driver. They were a race away from going broke, and he won that race. And Hendrick Motorsports, as we know, it wouldn't exist if that hadn't happened. And Jeff Bodine made a lot of great innovations and safety, other innovations within the car. Yeah, he's a douchebag. I mean, all of them, all the Bodine brothers are douchey in a way, but Jeff Bodine was really, really good in a lot of ways. Oh, and he saved the U.S. bobsled team.
Yep.
Because the Bodine bobsled came along, and since then, over the past 30 years, the United States bobsled team has become a force. So if you want to no-sell his racing career, where he was a multiple modified champion, won in Cup, Xfinity, ran teams in those series, he saved an Olympic team for our country. There you go. Neil Bonnet, of course, Ralph Earnhardt, we know, Foyt, Gant, Ray Hendrick, who was a great modified and late model stock driver, Tiny Lund, who I think a lot of the stories about Tiny Lund are just as cool as the fact that he was a great driver. Marvin Panch, it's amazing he's not in the Hall of Fame. I'm surprised. That's one that I would have figured he would be in the Hall of Fame. Marshall Teague, who drove the Hudson Hornets back in the day, like the great P.L. Newman voiced in the original Cars movie. So I guess, do you want me? I've been talking, so
yeah, I can bring up who I.
Do you want to go first?
Of.
Yeah. So
yeah,
for your top 25, and then I'm gonna go and mark what is similar and what, and I'll write what isn't on my end.
Well, I think to start off on this list, you have to list every Cup champion since 1998 that isn't already on the list. So that's basically everybody besides Jeff Gordon and Dale Jarrett. So, you got Bobby Labonte, two-time champion in NASCAR in Busch Series and in Cup. First championship for Joe Gibbs. Tony, Matt Kenseth, you already talked about him in the Hall of Fame. Kurt Busch, Jimmy, of course, Mr. 7-time. And then Brad, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, Joey Logano, Chase, and then Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, William Clyde Elliott II. So you have both Elliots on there. So that's what's the count on there? That's I'm not counting here, but that's
just give me a second here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
So that's 12
counting
guys.
All the champions.
Right. Okay, and then you have to start looking at guys who excelled, outside of that, who are notable and outstanding. I'm gonna go with Greg Biffle. He was a 3-time winner in across all 3 series, and won championship in Xfinity and in trucks. So that's 13. Carl Edwards probably should have won the 2008 championship. Had a chance to win in 2016. Of course, that got taken away from him there. 14 now. 15, I think Ryan Newman, 50 poles and over 50 poles in NASCAR. He's been one of the Rocket Man. Denny, he's probably of the modern drivers right now, probably the most successful to not win a championship. 16, 17, I think Dale Jr. should be on there. 2-time Daytona 500 winner and 2-time Xfinity champion. Not to mention, although it's not a reflective of his skill, but most popular driver on the last couple of years, or last 20 years. I mentioned Truex, right? I said him on the list. Okay, because
he's a champion.
Yeah, he's a champion, so of course he'd be on the list. I'll give one to Jamie McMurray. He had a Brickyard 400 win and a Daytona 500 win in the same year. He had it. So, and plus also another 3-time winner across truck, Xfinity, and Cup. So that should be up to 18 drivers now. Think
Did you give consideration to all the series? So thinking about Xfinity trucks and like even modifieds and
I think so,
stuff like that.
And the races, because I mean you look at some of the original lists like Jerry Cook. Well, he never. He raced. He was mostly a modified driver, right? And some of these guys who weren't
Richie Evans,
and I mean let's go back to, you talked about Sam Ard. Sam Ard is one of the original champions in what's known as the Xfinity series today. So I think he deserves a list to be on there as well. So yeah, that's now we should be at 19 drivers now. For me, it's starting to get tough to kind of list all these guys out. I mean, I'll give Jeff Burton a nod because he was a nominee for the Hall of Fame, and he's currently not on the list, and he had a pretty solid career in NASCAR. So you can give him there. Let's see who else. It's starting to get pretty hard here, but
I'll give you a little help here.
Yeah, give me a little help here.
Our guys, because Kenseth and Earnhardt, of course, are both now the last 2 years have been elected to the Hall of Fame. Tony and Bobby went in together with Gibbs as part of like a package deal a few years ago in the Hall of Fame. Ron Hornaday Jr.
Okay, yeah, we can give Ron Hornaday
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so
he's the all-time winner in Truck Series history outside of Kyle Busch, of course.
Yeah,
and he's won the most Truck Series championships. He is
so he
the
should be on there.
iconic driver in the series.
Yeah.
And he went in a few years ago, actually. The only other person, I mean, I might be giving away something on my end. Of course, Wendell Scott was put into the Hall of Fame for being a trailblazer and what he had to go through. But yeah, he's a guy that was in the Hall of Fame as well. And then Mike Stefanik, the legendary 7-time modified champion and 2-time or 6-time modified champion and 2-time Busch North Series champion. One of the greatest Northeast drivers ever. Drove the Burnham Boilers cars there. He was I always remember him driving the 51 car, and but he is in the Hall of Fame right now, NASCAR Hall of Fame right now. So I venture to say that anybody who's already in the Hall of Fame, I would figure would fill in that spot. Oh
yeah, for sure.
It's your list too.
So. No, I agree with some of the guys. Like you brought up Ron Hornaday on there, and he's someone who was very dominant in the Truck Series for a very long time and everything. So he deserves to
different careers. To be fair, he did it for Dale Earnhardt, driving in the DEI. Came back many years later, driving for Harvick, and then had another career where he ended up winning championships too.
Yeah, I would agree there. So, he's been somebody that, definitely was on that list. So yeah, I should be up to 20, and then I think Richie Evans should be on that list too, because he was somebody that
Richie was part of the top.
Okay, so he's already in the top 50.
And so is Jerry Cook.
So is Jerry Cook. Okay. I mean, we talk about, so I'll eliminate some people because we've talked about consideration to the Xfinity and the trucks, and some people that shouldn't be on the list. I don't think you can put Ricky Stenhouse won 2 times in the 2-time champion in Xfinity, right? But I would not consider him as one of the greatest ever because he did it in a relatively weak era, and he didn't follow it through with Cup dominance or relevance. Really, he wasn't really relevant in the Cup Series.
It's too early to determine
right.
Tyler Reddick.
Yeah. So and Tyler Reddick has only been around for a couple years.
About that.
Yeah.
I had a debate about that in my mind
with
my list. So
that's something there. We didn't bring him up, or we haven't mentioned him either, but how about Sterling Marlin? He had a good career as well. I mean, not very many wins, but 2-time Daytona 500 winner, and winners. Then he was the first winner for Dodge when they got back into the series with Ganassi Racing, and had a chance to win the 2002 title, but then came up short with the neck injury there, and ended up not winning. So of course gave birth to Jamie McMurray's career there. So could have been a lot more for him, but he's definitely should be on that list. I mean, it's got to start digging deeper here. I mean, maybe
got 22 over here based on the list you gave.
Yeah,
because you gave
Yeah, so I mean, you could give a nod to Casey Kane, 18-time winner in the Cup Series, 2004 Rookie of the Year. So that's number 23 on that list. Let's see now, 23. We'll go back to Xfinity and winners. I mean, Clint Boyer was pretty good in the Xfinity series and had a decent Cup career, and had a couple of solid years where he was pretty good and very competitive with Michael Waltrip Racing.
He only won one championship.
Yeah, he only won one championship.
There are guys that won 2 championships.
Yeah,
but it makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, it was a different. I mean, there are different weights to it, right? Because, like I said, with Boyer, or not with Boyer, but with Stenhouse, he did it when the Xfinity series was basically weak, and didn't really do a whole bunch in Xfinity and or in Cup. I mean, Clint at least contended for a championship or two in the Cup Series, and he was kind of a long shot to win the 2012 championship against Brad. And had it.
He finished second in the Cup Series.
Yeah, finished second in so he at least had
even after Jeff Gordon tried to kill him.
Yeah,
in Phoenix.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Gotta try to see who else is not on this list that isn't already. May have to.
So is that 23?
That's 23. That's 23. I have two more guys to pick. Yeah, we're gonna do this on the fly here because I've been very busy the last couple of days, so I haven't been able to really. But I had some buys in mind, like the championship list.
I think I have 24 here.
So okay, so you have 24.
1, 2.
Yeah.
Just give me a second.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 24 actually. You have.
Yeah. Okay, 24. We'll go with another Xfinity driver to close out the list. How about Randy LaJoie? He was a solid guy for many years, and in the one of the original Xfinity or Busch Series guys that did it back when it was a lot more competitive. So we'll give him a nod there for me. But yeah, I mean, some of these guys, they were champions. Like Ricky Stenhouse, Tyler Reddick. Either it's too early, or they did it in a weak field, and they didn't follow it through with Cup Series dominance. And then LaJoie, of course. He was a champion in the Xfinity Series, but he was relatively successful in the 90s when it was still kind of its own series and everything before it became Cup Light and everything. So, yeah, I feel like that's a pretty solid list. I had in my mind, it's a lot of guys in the very modern era here in the 2000s, and yeah, it kind of does show, I guess, a little bit of bias towards that year because that's when I started watching and everything. But
You started watching, yeah.
But I feel like those are guys that make up that list that weren't already on there, and if you're including the 25 years since 1998, then I think that you should be able to include those drivers on that list.
Yeah, it makes sense. I thought it would be only 5. It actually was 10. Was the difference between my list and yours. A lot of them were Cup drivers, for the exception of Randy LaJoy, which I had actually forgotten as part of a list I have over here on the bottom. But I was debating Randy LaJoy on my list, but I mean, as much as I think Randy LaJoy's greatest contribution in NASCAR was the seats he built, not as much the fact that he was a 2-time Xfinity Series champion. I mean, his mic work was first class because he had great quotes. He's built a kid. He made a kid that's entertaining as hell, even though he runs 30th in the Cup Series every week. But he's a great car builder, and he would be a Hall of Fame crew chief, honestly. But instead, he wants to run 30th in the Cup Series as a driver. I mean, whatever. God bless him. You brought up one before I get into my list. Yeah, you brought up Burton, Biffle, and Edwards, and Burton, in terms of like the best top drivers in NASCAR history in terms of total wins. Jeff Burton has 48 total wins, so it's one less than what Tony has in Cup. So he had 27 Xfinity wins and 21 Cup wins. I didn't know that, his full thing. So that's really crazy good. Greg Biffle had 56 total wins across all 3 series. That doesn't include, of course, running in the Southwest Tour where Benny Parsons found him on winter heat. 19 Cup wins, chance at a championship twice in 05 and 08. Won the Xfinity Championship, won 20 races. 17 truck wins, dominated in 2000, won the Truck Series Championship before he moved to Xfinity. 56 total wins. Carl Edwards has 72 total wins, 28 in Cup, 38 in Xfinity, which is way up there in terms of the highest in the total list. Of course, I think you put Kyle Busch because he went over 100 in his own level, but then after that, I think it's Mark Martin, or it's like Kevin Harvick, Mark Martin, and then Carl Edwards. And then 6 truck wins at Roush for 72 total wins, which puts him in the top 10 all time in wins. So those 3 guys, I definitely those were ones that I was like, oh man, I kind of was like, oh, that would be interesting because they're going to be like, it is a NASCAR Hall of Fame. And so, I mean, Biffle, I kind of feel like, I mean, honestly, Burton's going to get into the Hall of Fame because he's on, they need it for the PR for the announcing. They want him, they'll put him in the Hall of Fame. Even though he never won a championship, I think he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. But Biffle and Edwards definitely have cases. I mean, you brought up LaJoy, Boyer, Kane, Marlin, Larson, Newman, McMurray. Okay. So that's 5. Yeah, those are the 10. So those are the 10 I didn't have on my list. The ones I did have on my list were in no particular order, not intentional by any means, was Ron Hornaday Jr., Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle and Kurt Busch, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex Jr., Sam Ard, and William Clyde Elliott II. Those are the ones that I had similar to Josh. The ones that were different, of course, I went Wendell Scott. He's in the Hall of Fame. I did my senior thesis on him. There are other reasons. There's plenty of other reasons, honestly. We don't have to, this is not the day to do it, honestly. But we could really get into what Wendell Scott has meant to me as a NASCAR fan and a motorsports fan in general. And, but he made a difference for the good, considering what he had to go through. And essentially what he went through is what Darrell Wallace is going through now. So, I mean, Wendell, and it was much worse for Wendell Scott. So I put him in there. Then after that, I mean, we talked about the trucks. We talked about Ron Hornaday. So to me, Jack Sprague, nobody talks about Jack Sprague. I don't understand why. He's a 3-time Truck Series champion. When I think about the Truck Series, I think about 3 people: Hornaday, Sprague, and Mike Skinner. Mike Skinner won the first title. Ron Hornaday won the second title. Jack Sprague won the third title. Skinner won for Richard Childress Racing. Hornaday won for Dale Earnhardt. And Jack Sprague won for Richard Childress. Rick Hendrick. All 3 Chevy outfits. All 3 big-time people. Jack Sprague played a role in starting parking at Atlanta to help championships happen too. I mean, he ended up having a Xfinity and a Cup career after his Truck Series career. He was in the Busch Series prior to being in the trucks. I mean, Jack Sprague is one of the greatest drivers, and he's no doubt top 5 in Truck Series history. I put Mike Skinner in there because he had 20. I mean, I was looking up like Truck Series wins all time. So NASCAR Truck Series wins all time. I was looking up the list, and so they have the gallery. So all time Truck Series wins. I mean, of course, it's Kyle Busch, who has the most at what is it? What the heck is that? Why did that happen? Oh, international drivers. Okay, yeah, 62 for Kyle Busch. Ron Hornaday has 51. Mike Skinner has 28 Truck Series wins. He won the original title. He's tied for 3rd with Jack Sprague. There you go. So I guess I left Johnny Sauter off, but that was intentional because he's a tool. But yeah, let me go and make sure I mark those off. So I marked off Wendell Scott. I mentioned him. Mentioned Jack Sprague, and I mentioned Mike Skinner. Yeah, so we went over that, went over those. So on my list, I also included Todd Bodine because he had 22 wins and 2 championships. His combination with Germain Racing, with the Hillmans, they were dominant. They didn't always have a lot of funding, and they were able to go out there and win a lot of truck races. He was dominant on super speedways. Gave him a career now on TV. He was able to go make 500 starts because of Friesen this past year. So Todd Bodine's one of the all-time greatest. He's the 6th winningest driver in the Truck Series history. I mean, I mentioned Biffle. Ted Musgrave had 17 truck wins. Wow. Another Truck Series driver who is a 3-time series champion in the Truck Series is Matt Crafton. And I put him in. Yeah, he's won 15 races over basically a 22-year career, so it's not a very great win percentage. He was a Southwest Tour champion prior to entering the Truck Series. on and off for 22 years, being in the truck series, but he's a 3-time series. There's only one driver that has more titles than him in the truck series, and it's Ron Hornaday. And he was a mentor to him, and he slept on Ron Hornaday's couch in the basement, like many other drivers over time. Matt Crafton holds a place in history because of that. And he's still in the truck series. I don't think he's ever going to leave the truck series because Duke and Rhonda Thorson and Menards love him so much. So those guys are in there. And we listed some of these other ones. So now some of these last few drivers, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mentioned a little bit. I mentioned Mike Stefanik. He's one of my favorite drivers. I have a Northeast bias no matter what, but he was one of the greatest ever. And winning all those championships, you can't overlook that. And being great in the modified tour, the all-time modified tour championship winner in such a competitive series, means a lot. I also added Doug Coby to that list, who's a 5-time modified tour champion, or 6. Wait, I need to go and bring it up. I don't want to go and be wrong on this one, even though people aren't fact checking. NASCAR modified tour champion list. NASCAR wheel and modified tour. Yep. So all-time top 10 drivers. Yeah. So, I mean, Richie Evans, who was already in there with Jerry Cook, who had 6. Richie Evans had 9. Jerry Cook had 6. And then Ray Hendrick, who was a part of that list. Jeff Bodine. So those are 4 of the top 5 were all in the top 50. 2 drivers that I'm going to mention. I already mentioned Mike Stefanik. He had 7. So he had 9 total titles. 7 modified titles and 2 Busch North championships. So 9 all time. And then Tony Hirschman Jr., 5 championships in the modified tour between 1995 and 2005. Stefanik won 4 of his in that time frame. 4 of his 7 in that time frame, or 5 of his 7 around Tony Hirschman's time. So can you consider that those 2 guys were racing each other for all those years, and literally from 1995 till 2006, the only people that were able to beat them were Jerry Marquis in the year 2000 and Todd Szegedy, who was part of the Roush driver development deal back in the day. So in a span of however many years, from 95 to 2006. So where Stefanik ended up winning his 7th title. So those 2 guys were in there. Mike Stefanik's a legend. He's in the Hall of Fame. Tony Hirschman Jr. is somebody that I think should have consideration, winning 5 modified titles. Doug Coby has won 6 modified titles. He won 4 in a row from 14 through 17. Between 2012 through 2019, only Ryan Preece, who people know now in the Cup Series and Xfinity, and then Justin Bonsignor beat him for the title. Doug Coby won 6 championships. He's been in the mix ever since then, even with some of the changes that have gone on. He was in the mix this year to possibly go and get number 7 and tie Mike Stefanik, but John McKennedy got that victory there with an LFR chassis. So that's what, 5, 6 of the last 8 have been LFR chassis victories. Part of Doug Coby was part of it. Fury So Tony Uri's building a modifieds for Justin Bonsignor, so that's interesting. So Bonsignor is part of my list. 3-time modified champion, one of the best out there, never really got a shot in down south. But he's a really talented race car driver. He runs the midgets indoors at here in Atlantic City and otherwise. And he's won 32 races in the modified series and 19 poles. And then he's a 3-time champion. So he's he didn't. I thought he did try to come down south, but I guess I was wrong. I think maybe he ran the Southern Modified Tour. But he's finished first 3 times. He's been second twice and third once. So in the span of 6 years. So that's really, really good. He didn't compete for the whole tour this year, but won 2 races in the in this year. So he's a great driver, one of the best ever. And then I mentioned Doug Coby, 6-time champion, and then Tony Hirschman. Those 3 are. I think about the modified tour. You have Jeff Bodine. You have Ray Hendrick. You have Richie Evans and Jerry Cook. Those guys all represent the modified tour in a lot of ways. I think I have to write him down now too, actually. So there you go. I'm gonna write that down because I got a nice honorable mention list now. The last one on my list, so Wendell Scott, Ron Hornaday, Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Dale Jr., Matt Kenseth, Tony Hirschman, Mike Stefanik, Justin Bonsignor, Jack Sprague, Matt Crafton, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex, Mike Skinner, Todd Bodine, Sam Ard, William Clyde Elliott II, and Doug Coby. The last one was Larry Phillips. Larry Phillips is, I'm just going to read his bio from the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I'll steal their work. The legend of Missouri's Larry Phillips cannot be measured in wins alone. That's because nobody can say for sure how many victories there were there. He's a 5-time champion in the Winston Racing Series or NASCAR Weekly Series. I guess now it's the Advanced Auto Parts, whatever the hell it is. They said they named him one of the 25 top drivers in NASCAR Weekly Series in 2006. First of 2 drivers to win 5 championships. He won 220 out of 289 races between 1989 through 1996. 13 track championships in 3 states. So that's crazy. That's kind of like Dick Trickle, in that same level. He's in that realm, and his legend, precedes him, and even with his untimely death, with what happened to Dick Trickle. But Larry Phillips belongs in the Hall of Fame because it's a NASCAR Hall of Fame. It's the same way as he, belongs in the top 25. So before we move on, some people that I saw and I started digging in, you brought up Randy LaJoie, Josh. There's 2 other people I think you're familiar with to a little point. Larry Pearson, who was a 2-time Xfinity Series champion back in the 80s, of course, the son of David. And Jimmy Spencer, 2-time modified champion, Mr. Excitement, more known for the crying towel and the cigar and getting pied in the face by Brad Keselowski on NASCAR
Getting
Race
punched in the
Hub.
face by Kurt Busch.
And and then Kurt Busch, and then Jimmy Spencer returning the favor. Actually, no, he punched.
Yeah.
Kurt
I'm getting
Busch
it backwards. He punched Kurt Busch in the face, and then they suspended him for a week. And then got
suspended for Bristol, which is one of his favorite races. And then Kurt Busch won that race, which is, the irony is rich in that one. But those are three guys, and two of them are Northeast guys, so it's interesting I didn't put them in there. I had listed five more. Two of them are ARCA guys. Now, because NASCAR owns ARCA,
I didn't even consider
theory,
that.
We could.
Frank Kimmel.
Could have put Frank Kimmel, exactly. It's Frank Kimmel and Iggy Katona. Iggy Katona set all the records in ARCA that the likes of Benny Parsons tried to pass and all that. And then Frank Kimmel, 10-time ARCA Series champion.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but Taylor McLaurin just hauled in a pretty nice pass from Heineke there. That was pretty good. Over the top. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was Terry McLaurin's a beast. So it's still it's 20-14. Oh boy. It's still a close game. And Washington's
in the red zone.
Is up. Yeah. Washington's the red zone. So yeah, Frank Kimmel, Iggy Katona. Mentioned those three guys that were Xfinity, and Jimmy Spencer had a decent, like if you count as modified and Xfinity wins to his two questionable Cup wins he had. He won truck races too, so he actually won on all three series. I went down the road of CASCAR, which is now the Pinty series. So in theory, it's the same series. So I went down right now in terms of CASCAR, the all-time champion, the most champions in championships in the Pinty series is Scott Steckley with 4. So I've been like, okay, maybe I could have thought about him being in there. Andrew Ranger, former IndyCar and open wheel driver, who has now made his name in the Pinty series as the most wins. And he has 3 championships. So that would be one. But Don Thompson Jr., I remember watching it on Speed Channel when I first, in my teenage years, and they'd show CASCAR, and he would always win. I'm like, I hate this fucking guy. He always wins. I wanted the Mopar guy. I'm trying to remember Ron Beauchamp Jr., who drove the Mopar Dodge. or DJ Kennington, who's, of course, had a great career. I wanted a Mopar to win. I was like, they actually look like the cars. I loved it. As long as it wasn't a Chevy and it wasn't John Thompson Jr. But then I ended up liking J.R. Fitzpatrick, who was his teammate, and ended up beating him for the championship in 2004 after he had 4 straight championships. So that was my list. I mean, I wonder if anybody listens, go and tell us what your list would be, but hit us up on @GripStripPod, hit us up on our socials, hit us up on YouTube, because it's a pretty well-rounded list. Go down the rabbit hole. Josh went very Cup heavy. I tried to dig into the combination of Cup, Xfinity, trucks, and kind of give credit to some of the other series that don't get the kind of attention that they really should, and also giving consideration to who's on the ballot for the Hall of Fame relative to the people that weren't on the list already. So,
it's a good list, so and very well rounded.
Move forward with the roundup here. Heineke gets knocked down there on that play. The Auto Club Finals at Pomona this past weekend saw Austin Prock win in Top Fuel, Cruz Pentragon in Funny Car, Greg Anderson in Pro Stock in the last race for Ken Black as an owner. I think Rick Hendricks taking over the team, supposedly. Angie Smith wins in Pro Stock Motorcycle while her husband ties Legends Dave Schultz and Andrew Hines becoming 6-time Pro Stock Motorcycle champion there. Taylor Vetter was flipped over and did a Ross Chastain on the wall, which is funny. Grid Talk, we brought that up. One of the guys on the show was like, "Oh, did you see when Ross Chastain did that thing?"
We
I'm
talked
like, "What,
about
you mean
it."
Yeah, well, we talked about it.
No, I know that.
But it's like, oh, you and I said, oh, you mean the Hail Melon, and they lost it, and like the Hail Melon, and then I told them that Ross Chastain is a 7th-generation watermelon farmer, and they couldn't believe it. That was part of the fun. Oh, it's so great. You understand? That one moment is that trends across the world. Is Ross Chastain riding, going, and Tony Hawking the wall to get in the Final Four, and then his second move is sending Clyde, not even backing off and finishing second in the championship. You know, I mean, Hamlin's never going to do anything to him. Clyde's never going to do anything to him, so it's whatever. But yeah, that was funny. You brought up that stuff. But in terms of detailed results, Austin Prock beats Jersey's Antron Brown. In the final, Austin Prock runs 364 with the 1 at 336.23 miles an hour over the losing 370 with a 320.74. Each reaction time was close. 60 foot. Brown was giving up 12 thousandths, and then it got worse as it went along. Austin Prock had a rocket this weekend. He's a guy that has a real chance to become a champion here. Brittany Force, his teammate, lost, but he beat Brittany Force in the semifinal, even though she ran 3:37.58, had a faster speed. She had a slower elapsed time. Austin Prock beat her with a better overall run in the semifinal, and but Brittany Force is now a 2-time Top Fuel champion. So big weekend for John Force Racing on the Top Fuel side, not so much on the funny car side. Ron Capps lost to Cruz Pendragon in the final. Cruz Pendragon had a huge weekend, ran some great runs, great speeds. This weekend, beat John Force in the second round, no less, and then beat Ron Capps, who ended up winning the championship, coming from behind to beat Robert Height and Matt Hagan. Matt Hagan ended up losing in round 1. Robert Height lost in round 2, and that opened the door for Ron Capps to end up getting a second consecutive funny car title. Wins the U.S. Nationals, finally gets another championship, his third championship in his career. So great time for him. Enders had already won the Pro Stock title, made the finals and lost on a whole shot to Greg Anderson. I mean, he had a faster speed. Elapsed time was 1,000 slower, but he beat her on the tree. So there is an irony in that. Fernando Quadra actually made the semifinals, beat his brother in the process. Beat his son in the process, and then red lit in the semifinals. Enders beat her teammate Aaron Stanfield there. So Eric Enders and Bo Butner have a new sponsor going into next year. Camry Caruso won the Road to the Future award, so credit to them. Greg Anderson, Ken Black is getting out of the sport. It sounds like Rick Hendrick might be buying that team, so we'll see what the former KB Racing team looks like, because they have they're, what is it? Greg Anderson, Mason McGahey, and or not Mason McGahey. I mean, Greg Anderson and Kyle Koretsky and Dallas Glenn. Those are the three drivers that are part of the KB organization. So we'll see what happens with that in Pro Stock Motorcycle. Angie Smith beats Joey Gladstone. He had a faster lapse time, but she had a better reaction time to go and get a victory there. Gladstone beats her husband, Matt Smith, but Matt Smith becomes a 2-time or 6-time champion in the series, tying the legendary Dave Schultz and Matt Hines as 6-time champions in the Pro Stock Motorcycle category. And then Pro Mod actually ran, did they? No, they didn't. Okay. So, yeah, that's NHRA. There's a lot of stuff. We'll probably get into some news as the off season goes on. I already talked about the Pro Stock Motorcycle, but they're mentioning things that are going to be coming up. So we'll have stuff to talk about. 8 hours of Bahrain saw the number 7 Toyota, Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez get the victory, but their teammate Sebastian Buemi, Brendan Hartley, and Ryo Hirakawa, who finished second in the race, won the World Championship by 5 points over the Alpine team of Negrão, Lapierre, and Vaxvier. The Peugeot 94 finished fourth overall. And then in terms of I brought up the standings. So for LMP2, Jota Sport won by 21 points. GTM, TF Sport won. Hypercar was Toyota. Hypercar win for Toyota. Cup for GT manufacturers. Ferrari gets the victory. In terms of LMP2 drivers, Roberto Gonzalez, Antonio Felix da Costa, and Will Stevens, who ended up finishing 7th overall and a lap behind the winning team of Sean Galale, Robin Frijns, Rene Rast. Robin Frijns, Sean Galale finished second in the Drivers' Championship for LMP2. In GTM, Ben Keating and Marco Sorensen get the championship there over Paul Dallana, David Pittard, Nicky Thiem. Ben Keating, of course, going to be driving a Corvette next year in the WEC. The GTD Pro Championship goes to Ferrari. Alessandro Perguidi, James Colato get the win by 3 points over Michael Christensen, Kevin Estra. Miguel Molina, Antonio Fuoco finished third in regards to as we're going through LMP2. So, yeah, Miguel Molina and Antonio Fuoco won the race this past weekend, the Ferrari by a lap over Tommy Milner and Nick Tandy. Michael Christensen and Kevin Estra finished third in class. Perguidi and Colato finished fifth in class, but it was still enough for them to go and get the job done. Look, Gunnar Jeanette was racing in the race. That's interesting. Yeah, so I mentioned the podium in the top three, and those were the champions. In regards to the test, Jose Maria Lopez was led the test there at Bahrain. the postseason test for Toyota's. What is it called there? You had PK Jr., Nelson Piquet Jr. running LMP2. The Peugeot ran all right there. Maximilian Gunther was in the Peugeot. He's running Formula E for Maserati. Jan Urlacher was in the Peugeot. They were testing a bunch of people. And been nominated for the role. Who is that? I don't even know who that. Lilo. Look at that. Yeah, so female driver Lilo Wadu drove the Toyota hypercar. Fifth among drivers ran during morning session. PK Junior race for Anglo American for United Autosports. Antonio Fuqua for Ferrari turned okay. And then Ollie Caldwell, Marcus Armstrong, F2 drivers. They got to test the Richard Mille car. Ben Keating to drive Corvette. As Porsche driver. Michael Peterson. All right, so that's that. I mean, a lot to come in regards to that the WEC with a lot of the new additions coming into the new convergence with the LMDH and the hypercar category. In World Superbikes, Alvaro Bautista becomes a world champion again, this time in World Superbikes after a solid weekend at Mandalika, which saw him just kind of follow Toprak Raskat-Lioku. Toprak Raskat-Lioku, the defending world champion, won race one over Bautista. Johnny Ray with a podium. Garrett Gerloff finished 7th in the first race. And then, so you don't have to go through that. Super pole race. Raskat-Lioku over Ray Locatelli. Bautista was 4th. Gerloff was 13th. And then in race 2, Toprak Raskat-Lioku wins over Alvaro Bautista by 1.23 seconds. Johnny Ray was 2.825 seconds overall behind the defending world champion. Gerloff gets an 8th place finish in race 2. The points with one race to go, of course, the championship is done. Alvaro Bautista is the World Superbike champion. 50 Ducati is 49 points ahead of Yamaha right now. So it's still in a play. So we'll see what happens. Constructors is still in play to a point, but the riders, the World Championship for riders is not. Raskat-Lioku is 37 points out of Johnny Ray for second. Michael Ruben Rinaldi seems to be pretty solid in 4th. Andrea Locatelli is only 11 points out of Alex Lowe's, 15 points out of Axel Bassani. So that's something to look at. As it stands, I think, Scott Redding, Iker Lackawanna. I think Iker Lackawanna is missing the last race there. But Javi Vieje is 10th in points, and Garrett Gerloff is 25 points behind in 11th. 17 points ahead of Laura Spaz in 12th. So we'll see what happens. They'll be at Phillip Island this weekend to wrap up their season. So that's credit to Bautista and the Ducati team there to go and get the job done. In the WRC, the results of Rally Japan, Saw Thierry Neuville get the victory. Thierry Neuville over Otanek. So Hyundai 1-2. Takamoto Katsuda for Toyota finishes third. Sebastian Ogier fourth. Elfrin Evans finishes fifth. The first Ford, Gus Greensmith finishes sixth. So that was the championship there. Championship drivers there. RC2, so Kalle Rovanperä, the world champion, finished 12th overall. American Sean Johnston in a Rally 2 Citroen finished 13th overall. So interesting there. I'm trying to scroll through some of these other people. And then the standings to end this year's World Rally Championship. Kalle Rovanperä wins the championship by 50 points. Otanek is, as it stands right now, doesn't have a job. So we don't know where he's going to go. He's not going to Ford because they may not have the funding. Toyota's already got drivers, so interesting dynamic there. Thierry Neuville finishes third. Elfrin Evans fourth. Katsuda fifth. Ogier in a limited schedule finishes sixth. The multi-time world champion, along with, of course, Sebastian Loeb, finished 11th in his. He only scored points in 2 races. He won Rally Monte Carlo and then finished 8th in one round there of the championship. Last thing we'll go over before we get into NFL is F2. A lot going on in F2. The drivers, of course, the top 5 or 6 in Formula 2 will have enough. The top 5 will definitely have enough points to advance. That became a thing, of course, with Colton Herta and the like. Right now, of course, Drogovic is a test and reserve for Aston Martin. And I don't think he's doing anything else. Teo Pocher, we don't know what he's going to be doing, but it looks like more than likely he's going to finish second in the championship. The real battle starts with Logan Sargent, who is third and has been announced as a driver for Williams, pending his results here this weekend at Abu Dhabi. Jack Doohan, Jehan Daruvla, Enzo Fittipaldi are all 9 points behind him. Daruvla is part of the Red Bull Academy. Enzo Fittipaldi just joined the Red Bull Academy. Liam Lawson, I think, is still a part of it, and he's a further 3 points back behind that, so he is 12 points back. Frederick Vesti, 18. Iwasa, 21. Yuri Vips, 25. And so, I mean, the reality is there is the possibility of real fluctuation going on. I mean, Sargent has not been the most consistent driver by any stretch of imagination. He went on a run in the summer between Baku, Silverstone, and Spiel, and then Austria. Since then, 3, 4, 14, 15, 20 points since then amongst the following 10 rounds of the championship. So it's not, that's part of the reason why it's still a race. I honestly believe they're going to put all energy to make sure that he gets the points necessary to advance into Formula One. I hope so. I mean, Drogovic, it's a victory lap. Pocher, I don't know what he's really racing for, honestly, but Doohan is racing for something because he's part of Alpine's academy. Deruvolo's racing for his career, to be fair, because now Enzo Fittipaldi is a part of Red Bull Academy, and he's been solid recently. Lawson has had a couple of rough rounds, but has had some good races otherwise. Vesti had a good performance at Imola back in September. Iwasu, I talked about in regards to his potential, has had some great rounds earlier in the season. The French Grand Prix, Hungarian Grand Prix, and also Zandvoort, all of those kind of showed his potential. So we'll see what happens with that and who ends up moving up, having enough points to move up to to be able to move up to Formula One. Looks like there was a score there. Pick.
Yeah, Devontae Smith got a touchdown earlier.
And then CJ Gardner-Johnson
picked off the jump ball to Terry McLaurin.
Oh boy, so it's 23-21 Washington. It's a huge turnover there. That could have, if he gets that and they're driving, they might have had a chance to put this game away.
Yeah, just cover 2 defense there. Yeah.
So, I mean, what is it called? I'm trying to say, they don't list who's already eligible, but I already had I found out super license. So essentially in F2, if you finish in the top 3, no matter what, you're going to get 40 points. And then if you finish in the top 5, along with your 3-year total, you should be able, the last 3 years with the 80%, whatever, which Logan Sargent has because of his results a couple of years ago in Formula 3. Even with his results from last year, he's in play. If he can finish in the top 5 in the championship, he's fine. I kind of find some of the way they don't give enough weight to. They give weight to other championships that really are not as tough. Like IMSA should be at the same level as Super Formula or LMP2, honestly, or because they're in the same level as LMP2 and GT500. DTM, not so much, whatever. Supercars and Cup, Indy Lights. I mean, W Series is a joke, and it's got the same weight as Indy Lights, Cup, and Supercars. So it tells you the bias that they have there. Xfinity gets super license points. So Keebler has 10 super license points. And whatever, the top 4 from this past year have super license points. So that's interesting. All right. So I'm going to give you the form, Josh, to go off on your Jaguars and your fantasy team. I'm trying to go and bring up the updated stand points right now. Oh, wow. So actually, Steve has actually passed Wilson to win the week. Joe is going to be the lucky loser. I'm going to lose again to Professor J, which is awesome. Jeff is still in a battle with Manny. He needs help. He's 11 points behind Manny right now, so this could be a big upset. Wilson could end up taking a 1-game lead here. I gave him as a run. I think that's about the only team that's really given him a run in recent weeks. But yeah, let us know what you're thinking in regards to what the Jaguars did in their play for, I don't know who they're going to get in the draft, because I think they're going to be movers in their draft, because they're going to be people that want to get a draft pick to pick a quarterback. So I think they do have a quarterback. They do have other pieces there, but not really working out so well this year. And Doug Peterson's first year at the helm of the Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, for the Jags, it's been a tough season, 3-7. They've been competitive in every game, and they've had the lead. This is the first game that they did not have the lead in, I think, overall, and they've had the lead in every other game at some point. So I mean, it's pretty good, I guess, but they just haven't figured out how to win, and that's the thing, is that they've been, the margin of error has been pretty thin, and they've been making mistakes and costing games in one way or another, and that's how they have 7 losses. So yeah, I mean, they probably need another year, but my problem with that is the fact that you never know what's going to happen in next year. It's never a given, and also what you project for next year might not always work out, and other teams will adapt and make changes and everything. So that's my I guess criticism of that. And when people say, well, they'll be there next year. I mean, you can project that for some players like Trevor Lawrence or the wide receivers, or something like that. But as far as like a overall team, it's hard to project that. And I that's why I don't really like the term, or the talk of playing for the future, because ultimately you have to play for now, with respect to the future. But I didn't really like how the broadcast was talking about that they'll be a good team in a year or so, because they definitely had chances to win here on Sunday. Started off the game with the onside kick, which was a pretty good decision and the right decision, but then they couldn't convert on third down. They had an early drop by Christian Kirk, which might have not been the best pass by Trevor, but at the same time, got to haul that one in. You're at the 10-yard line, coming off of an onside kick. So you got to make those opportunities, and it's something that you need to you need to be able to take advantage of. And I feel like in some situations the play calling was still suspect, but it wasn't as bad as before. Defensively, I think is the biggest question, because they didn't really affect the Kansas City Chiefs really on defense. They forced 3 turnovers, but they couldn't really pressure Patrick Mahomes really into any mistakes. It was just a result of their skill players or return men fumbling the ball. I mean, Patrick Mahomes threw an interception, but he didn't really get pressured or anything or get affected. So that's a question mark there. I mean, it wasn't really that bad a game. They just got outscored really by the Kansas City Chiefs. So I can't really complain too much. But they once again they missed opportunities, and also they missed a field goal in the first half, and then in the second half, or in the first quarter they missed a field goal. In the second quarter, right before the half, they missed a field goal again after forcing a fumble. And then when you have turnovers, you have to take advantage. And how they only got like 7 points or 3 points after off of 3 turnovers is not good. And they've got to be able to take advantage of opportunities and everything. So 7 games lost now and 3 wins. We'll see if they can contain Lamar Jackson and somehow pull off a win at home in 2 weeks. They got a bye week, so don't have to talk about him next week. We'll just talk about the fantasy team. So I mean, nothing too much to complain about. I mean, I think Trevor did pretty well, and starting to come into his own. So I think maybe the next couple weeks we'll really see Trevor Lawrence really play good, continue the trend he's been in the last couple weeks of playing really good football. Fantasy team was all right, but you know, made some decisions on who to start. You know, I picked up Tyler Higbee, which I think was the right call. I had him earlier in the year and I dropped him for some reason, and now I have him again. So, good call there. Probably, probably could have faded David Montgomery and put in Najee Harris back in the lineup. Could have swapped out Debo for DeAndre Carter. That was a good pickup, and I think I'm gonna hold on to him as long as the Chargers still have issues at wide receiver, depth with Keenan Allen having been out and Mike Williams being out. So that's a missed opportunity there to start him, but I always go with the proven players over the unproven players, and and according to their matchups and everything. So, yeah, I mean, it was okay on the fantasy side this week. I just, needed more from it. Jonathan Allen so far only has 3 points. It's hard to really get points from a defensive tackle position. Really, you need a defensive end or defensive lineman that can get points. DT is a little bit harder to get production from in fantasy, so probably need to find another D end.
Sacks is what has to happen. And I've been streaming them, and I'll get into it.
Yeah. I think that's the strategy there. So we'll drop the 5-5 on the year. I mean, looking at the scores, looks like it's gonna be a stranglehold on 4th, 5th, and 6th. There's going to be a hodgepodge of mediocre fantasy teams, or teams that can't get out of their own way. So it's going to be interesting from here on out to try to get into 4th spot. I think it's pretty clear, unless I can turn things around, it's going to be just a fight to try to get to 4th place for the fantasy playoffs. So got a couple of more weeks to do that, so gotta start having more consistency there. But we'll just keep on going throughout the next couple of weeks here and see how we can do there. But I mean, overall, my skill players, I felt did pretty well, but just came up short in some areas. But it is what it is. So we'll take the L more than likely, unless something happens here in that last couple of minutes in this game and Monday Night Football, and move forward. But it's been a pretty interesting season. Definitely a very very challenging one.
Yeah, I'm adjusting the chart in our for our fantasy because I keep. Oh man, that was almost an interception. Or no, that was a pick, or that was a catch. I thought it was okay. Still a 2-point game. Washington trying to do the upset, 11-point dog in this game on a third and 13. Taylor Heineke. Oh boy, that's not good. You better get rid of that ball. He threw it out of bounds. Okay, yeah. Yeah, they're going to lose the game. But I'm going to be a lucky loser, more than likely. Steve looks like he's going to win for, what is it? Third week this year. Wilson has won. How many? I mean, he's won with 3 different team names. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so he's won. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's won 4 times this year. Steve's won 3 times this year. Joey has won twice. Yeah, so there's only 4 guys that have won high points. Wilson's got the best team, obviously. Jeff is gonna end up taking a double. He's gonna be tied with. Oh wow, that's a field goal. That's huge. Whoever their kicker is really effing good. 26-21. there. I mean, my fantasy team, I'm going to end up losing to Professor J again. Tight matchup. Needed more productivity out of Greg Dulcich. I mean, you brought up Tyler Higbee. I dropped him because he sucked. And then, of course, everybody I drop ends up playing better for other people. Cameron Hayward shit the bed for me. Eddie Jackson has been terrible the last 2 weeks and 3 out of the last 4. And to be fair, he's been bad for most of the time I've had him. And I probably should have dropped him. But, Professor J's IDPs ended up 47 points. Right now, I only have 29 points. So that's 18 points. Right now, I'm down by 12. So, and he has Terry McLaurin, who has 128 yards on 8 receptions and a solo tackle. So, because of an interception. So, Brian Robinson has 23 rushes for 79 yards and a touchdown. So, he's had a good game. He's done his part. I needed a miracle. Dulcich didn't do anything. My IDPs didn't do anything. My quarterbacks, basically, it was an even game. He didn't even have a player in one of his flex spots. So I'm going to fall to 4-6. More than pretty high likelihood I'm falling to 4-6 here. Josh is going to fall to 5-5. I'm going to drop to 7, so I'm going to fall out of playoff position. Vic, who had a nightmare start to the year, is now back in the race. Or be a 4-way tie. Joey Sly, 55-yard field goal. So, 4-way tie for the last playoff spot. Wilson ends up going and getting another victory. He'd be a game ahead of Jeff and Professor J, who both be at 7-3. Wilson 8-2. Joe and Josh should be at 5-5. As of now, Jeff could still win. He's 5. He's essentially like 6 points behind, and he has 4 players. So there's a pretty high likelihood there. Joe has lost, but he has Taylor Heineke, and Taylor Heineke is not really. He's had 1 interception and a fumble lost, so that'll do it. CJ Gardner-Johnson has an interception and 2 pass deflections, so that doesn't help Joe's cause. He left a lot of points on the bench this week. He'll probably be ruining that. He would have had a better chance. Optimal lineup would have been even with his So even with his optimal lineup, he still would have lost, actually, with Heineke on the bench and Mike Evans. So can't really say anything. I mean, that's because so, and that's with the points right now. So
yeah, Vic had Aaron Rodgers on the bench, which I find surprising, and he had Jacoby Brissett instead of Aaron Rodgers starting.
He only lost 5 points that way. He got bailed out by Derwin James and Rashad Evans and the IDPs. You got robbed on that side. I mean, David Montgomery, I'm debating cutting him on my other team. Gino didn't have his best game by any means. Derrick Henry had a, meh game. Higbee actually had a good one. I mean, now with Cooper Kupp hurt, it's going to be a problem for them. Rondale Moore had a good game. So that's a good look. I mean, the Raiders are a disaster, but they're going to throw the ball a lot. So it's interesting to see what happens there. Niners won yesterday. It wasn't pretty, but they won. McCaffrey gets a touchdown, but doesn't have as many carries as Elijah Mitchell, who returned from the IR. Some of the play calling in the red zone was questionable or borderline terrible. Mike McGlinchey in the red zone makes a terrible decision in blocking and costs a touchdown. People are defending him, but he's a turnstile. I mean, Jimmy didn't even throw a touchdown, but when he doesn't throw a touchdown, they win more games than when he does, which is ridiculous. What is the point of him being a quarterback then? At that point, he should just be a fucking male model. If he's not going to go and throw touchdowns, what's the point of having him as a quarterback? You can have Chase Purdy not throw any touchdowns. But, I mean, really, it's whatever. I don't know. We'll see what happens next Monday night. I'll be a little more fired up because the Niners will be playing against the Arizona Cardinals in Mexico City. After Pato O'Ward runs FP1 for McLaren at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. My fantasy team's been a bad week. Gonna lose all 3 matchups that I'm in, so in bad shape in 2 of my leagues. I'm a game out of the playoffs in 2 of them. In a good spot in 1 of them, but taking a loss. Had a lot of people on bye this week. I think is part of the reason why. A tough bye week, but we'll see what happens next week. We'll see what happens with the Niners as well. So let's get into the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel, his last race of his career. 299 races once he starts on Sunday. It's pretty crazy to think that Sebastian Vettel is retiring. 53 wins, 57 poles, 122 podiums. I mean, this year is the first time. This year will be the first year since 2007 when he made his debut in Formula One that he didn't get a podium, which is interesting. Since he's moved over to Aston Martin, he has not had a lot of success, of course, because of, he got COVID. And 2020 was a disaster year anyway. It was a complete throwaway of a season in 2020. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was a really bad year. And then he joined Aston Martin in 2021, but he wasn't able to run every race because of the COVID. So that's a crazy thing. But he 53 wins in Formula One. Average finish of 7, which is amazing. Over 3,000 points, led 3,500 laps. Won 4 consecutive world championships, finished second another 3 times on top of that. Is one of the greatest drivers ever, man. And he's going to be missed because I think he had some rough edges for sure in his earlier days, and he had a lot of similarities to what, Fish Lips is now, but what the difference is, he kind of woke up and said, you know what, I want to be a better person. I'm going to become a better person. And the reality is he became that. and he's got, who knows what he's going to do. I'm kind of thinking he's going to end up owning an Extreme E team or a Formula E team. Because what the hell? I think he's got bigger plans in general, which is great, and it speaks to what kind of man he is at age 35 and what he brings to the table. I don't think he's done with racing as of yet. I mean, he's going to take a break. I don't think he's going away. He might. I think he's going to be a team principal. He's going to own a team in some sort of fashion in one of these formulas that's more about sustainability. So whether it's Formula E, Extreme E, one of these other things that are coming around, I think he's going to have his hands in that. DTM is trying to go to an all, biofuel or electric formula. So that might be a way for him. But Vettel, what is it, fourth all time in wins, all time, and that's gotta go credit there in terms of the wins and all that, and 4 world championships in a row. But we're gonna miss him out on the grid before we make our picks for this Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely made an impact for sure, and he was one of the best drivers in Formula One for a long time, and won four championships in a row at Red Bull. Actually, yeah, 4 championships in a row there from 2010 through 2013, and he was a really good driver during that era, and also finished second in 2009. So that was a pretty dominant era for Red Bull Racing, and they haven't been that dominant really as a team until now with Verstappen. It seems like now they're finally beginning to reclaim that dominance from that era. So it's he's gonna be missed for sure, and he was definitely one of the best drivers that we've seen ever in Formula One. And during his second part of his career with Ferrari, as a pretty good challenger to Lewis Hamilton for a couple of years, and he had opportunities in 2017 and 2018 to possibly take it the fight to Lewis, but Lewis ended up outclassing him in both of those years. But he's been one of the drivers who's also been critical of the series when he needed to be, and I think one of his quotes that I remember from him is like, "Honestly, what are we doing here?" And that's I think what you can say about a lot of the Formula One races and things in racing in general. But I mean, he's got a good legacy in racing, and also he'll be a guy that I think will be very active in racing post career, and then also he's trying to be an activist, and I'm sure he'll try to continue to be very very active in I guess climate change and other things for whatever it's worth. And he's somebody that's going to try to I could see him doing Extreme E or Formula E or something like that, to like as some kind of involvement there to continue to push for change and things. So we could see him in there. But yeah, definitely be missed. 299 races and everything. So kind of wish it would be a 300 career race just to make it an even number, but can't always it's not really that significant. But still what a great career in Formula One for sure.
He's a legend, third all-time winningest driver in Formula One behind Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher, who was his mentor. And, of course, Sebastian Vettel has been a mentor to Mick, who will be making his last start, at least for now, in Formula One this weekend at Abu Dhabi. So with that, I was looking at the drivers right now. So then after this weekend, Lewis would be active, and then right now Verstappen, 7 wins away from Senna, 17 away from Prost, and 19 away from Vettel. That's basically his target. Alonso has not won a Formula One race since the 2013 Spanish Grand Prix, and he's been involved in Formula One, on and off since 2013 till now. For 3 years, of course, he took away for WEC and other shit he did. But yeah, and that's really what it is right now in terms of active racing, active drivers. Bottas is in a back of the field car. Ricciardo's going to be taking a break from Formula One, becoming the test driver for Red Bull, more than likely, it seems like. In terms of, other drivers that are active, Leclerc has 5 wins, Perez has 4, and then, Gasly, Ocon, Sainz, and Russell all have 1. So, there really ain't anybody on the grid that has wins outside of Lewis that can compete, other than Lewis and Fish Lips. In that case, I mean, in regards to what I think is going to happen here at Abu Dhabi, I said it. I figure Verstappen gets another win, and then Mercedes is up there. I'll say George Russell. So I'll say Verstappen, Russell, and then Ferrari will be up there, but I think it'll be Carlos Sainz. The driver that'll get second in the Drivers' Championship will be Sergio Perez, finishing 4th. And Charles Leclerc will finish 5th. So I'm going to go and put that in there. So F1, Abu Dhabi GP. So I guess we forgot to put the picks for last week.
Yeah, well, we both just said Verstappen. I think.
Yeah, we both said Verstappen. That's what it was. So Abu Dhabi Grand Prix MV to win. I said Russell second, Sainz third, which could actually give Sainz 5th in the World Championship based on what I'm saying. Perez 4th. That's not what I want, believe me. Or for Sainz to go and take over Hamilton, and then Leclerc 5th. That's Phil. Yeah, so that's my picks for this weekend. I would say the wild card would be Sebastian Vettel. And then Phil's wild card is Seb Vettel, because it's his last race. He doesn't give a fuck. So, how about you, Josh?
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes, winning the final race. He hasn't won a race this year, and I think it's important that Lewis doesn't go winless in his career. And Mercedes, they've been developing their car so far. They've continued to develop it, and they showed a lot of speed last weekend in Brazil, and I think they can continue that pace in Abu Dhabi to finish the year. Kind of a last laugh of the year, last gasp, and I think Lewis has the capability to do it. I think second goes to I'm going to say that second goes to Verstappen, but third goes to George Russell, and then I say that Perez finishes. I'll just say Perez finishes fourth, and Leclerc finishes in fifth, like you said there. So that Perez gets second in the title, and then wild card. I'll go with Fernando Alonso. Just why not? He's been one of those guys that like just random, like he's in ninth place in the standings right now, but he just somehow just randomly grabs like these fifth, sixth, seventh place results throughout the year. And I feel like he's actually, like, him and his teammate Ocon, they've both I feel like they've just gotten a lot of speed out of this car, out of their team and Alpine. I feel like they both made their their cars faster than what I guess they have are capable of. So I think they've done a real good job this season for both of them. And Fernando, of course, leaving, and Esteban going to have a new teammate in Pierre Gasly in 2023. So should be interesting this weekend. Final race of the year, final major race of the year. So looking forward to watching, and at least this one will be an early one. So going to be like one of those early races you can just get up and watch, rather kind of, and friendly to our British friends and everything that actually be able to watch it on a normal time. Because of course the last couple of weeks have been on the American timeline, and it's a bit later for them and everything, so a little bit easier on them as well. So yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. Looking forward to seeing what we're going to see this weekend here at the last race of the Formula 1 season.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that, and we'll be back for episode 145 prior to Thanksgiving. It's crazy. Prior to Thanksgiving, we'll be talking football. We'll be talking F1. Other than that, I'm not really sure. It's a good question. What else is on the schedule? Abu Dhabi for F1, F2, and then World Superbikes. And then the following week is Extreme E for their finale in Punta del Este. Jeddah for World Touring Car. So I'm assuming that's they're running World Touring Cars, that shithole in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, and then December, the following week is Supercars at Adelaide. So, and nothing much in regards. We'll go over the Formula 1, then we'll get into Formula 2 World Superbikes to finish the season. There will be a little bit in the roundup. Then we'll have roundup the following week. So we'll go from there. We'll see what happens in Formula 1 in terms of the driver tests. We'll get into that a little more. Oscar Piastri will debut for McLaren. Alonso will be a young driver yet again for Aston Martin. Hopefully Logan Sargent will make his debut for Williams. And then Hulkenberg for Haas. And then, I think that's... And then Pierre Gasly will also get to drive for Alpine for the first time. Is that a... Oh, that's a touchdown. That's going to mess the lineup. Is it going to mess up the line? Is that a pick? Oh, that messes the lineup. They went over the line. It's 32-21. They beat the line. Oh boy.
Oh wow. Eagles
and so not only did the Eagles lose for the first time, the people that pick Washington at +11 just got screwed because of that play. So that's going to be on Scott Van Pelt's Bad Beats here in a few minutes' time on Sports Center. So Philadelphia is undefeated. Washington
they're no longer undefeated.
Yeah, Philadelphia is now 8-1, and Washington, I think, has went past the 49ers to become the last playoff seed. With Taylor effing Heineke, what a performance. You called it earlier. We do this show long enough. You said you had more hope in them than I thought. And
yeah, I just don't like the Eagles, so I mean, I don't really like any of the NFC East. I kind of like Washington a little bit as far as like I guess if I were to pick a team in the NFC East, like I mean they're the division that boomers like, but
yeah,
overall, but I don't know. I always feel like Washington's kind of like the underdog in that division. And I guess it helps that Junior's a fan of the Redskins, or the Commanders. I'm used to saying, that's been their name for a long time and everything.
Makes sense, yeah.
But, the Commanders, they've been Junior's team for his whole life, and I guess I can have a reason to like if I wanted to like the Commanders, but I mean it's what it's fine. But I mean, this is probably one of the games where you wish you had a team defense rather than IDPs, because the Washington defense, they had a good game overall, and return touchdown. That's just adds, if you had a team defense along with the sacks and the interceptions and the forced fumbles, that's probably like a 20-point game, I'd say, out of a team defense. And if we did that instead of IDPs, but that's a pretty interesting game there.
I was looking at my other league where I got my ass kicked, and I was seeing if anybody actually played Washington's defense, and nobody did.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
So your other league is IDP or team defense rather than IDPs?
It's standard, straight up standard.
Yeah.
So I have to go and look it up out of curiosity. You can keep going because it's your
a sim segment anyways. Yeah. May as well do that part. But sim racing this week. Did Talladega with the 87 car, and actually won one of them, which is on my stream. So that one was kind of a bit of a wreck fest. Kind of just hung out in the back and tried to drive my way up towards the front and just missed all the wrecks. And then by the end, was just drafting along, trying to push the guy out in front to the lead. And then I was the only Ford out in front, and everybody else was a Buick or a Chevy. And I had a lot more speed than them, so I was able to just kind of push the leader and just, push them way out in front, and didn't really have any challenge from anybody else trying to draft up there. There's a couple times where I got close, but we had a last caution, and I just came in and got tires, and I was able just to hold on to the lead and, block when I needed to. And the last corner, like the guy had a run on the inside of me in the tri-oval, but almost kind of got there and started to get a little loose trying to hold it down on the bottom, but was able to hold on to the win and everything. So I haven't won on iRacing in a bit, and maybe since the Indy 500. So it was good to get a win there in Talladega, get one on stream, so that was good. Ran a couple other races on my own with no stream. Ran pretty well, top 5 and everything. And actually, the one before the win, I wrecked a guy trying to pass for the win on the last lap. I had the inside line, and I just went to the bottom, and he blocked, and then I kept going down to the flat, and I was trying to hope that I'd get there before the trial returned, and I didn't. And then I hooked him and spun him out. And everything, so my fault there, I guess. But in my mind, it's 87. They didn't have the yellow line rule back then, so that's what I was thinking. They're trying to go for for the pass there, but probably could have faked to the inside and gone back to the outside and gone 3 wide or something like that, because there's another guy behind me as well, or to the outside of me as well. But yeah, it's whatever. Still won another one later on. And then I had run on Saturday night again, and ran, tried to go for another win, or at least another good finish, and got wrecked pretty early into it. So sometimes that's how Talladega goes, but I was able to get one in there and get a win. And then I actually raced Talladega with the IndyCar. They had the IndyCars at Talladega, and it's pretty interesting. You go 256 miles an hour in the draft, and then you have to lift to get out of it because you catch up to the back of other cars pretty quickly. So you get it, you kind of hang back a little bit, and then you just get a super mega run, like as you start to get closer and you're in top gear, in sixth gear, and then get up to 250, 255, and then you have to, once you get right up to the gearbox, like, you gotta touch the brakes and everything. So ran well there too. I think finished 5th or 6th in that one, but it was definitely a crazy race, and it was interesting. Not a whole lot of room to pass and everything, because we're all kind of stacked up against each other. Not as it's a little bit harder to maneuver around in traffic, because you can take a little bit of contact in NASCAR, but in IndyCar can't really take that much, or else you're going to pirouette into the air and everything. So taking a 6th there or 5th there is not bad for the field and for the track type and everything. But that was pretty interesting run there. Did Ferrari GT3 at Road America a couple of times. Finished all right there. I think I had one in the podium, and another. I'm not sure where I finished another one, but I ran that one a couple of times too, and think I got a podium there. But yeah, that was good at Road America. Always like that track as well. So this week, well, I'm trying to pull up the schedule here, and it wants me to log in. But yeah, this week probably be on iRacing a little bit too towards the end of the week, more than likely over the weekend. I had a little bit more time this week, since we had a hurricane again, Hurricane Nicole, this week in Florida. So had got some time off of work. They sent us home, so we wouldn't have to travel into work during a storm. Although it wasn't even that bad of a storm, so got through that okay. Didn't lose power this time and everything. So glad I didn't lose power or anything last week during the storm. So that's good. This week on iRacing, another race at Road America, actually, the Hyundai Elantra, Honda Civic, Hyundai Velocidor, Audi RS3 LMS at Road America. Should be interesting.
Oh, it's the WTCR kind of deal.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. Got Cup at iRacing Super Speedway. Should be interesting. IMSA at the Roval this week. Let's see what else. Another series at Road America. I don't know if I have a car though for that one. Let's see what else. That should be interesting. NASCAR series this week. Xfinity at Dover. I don't have Dover though, so let's see. Legend Series 87 cars at Las Vegas. That should be interesting. IndyCar, where's IndyCar at this week? IndyCar fixed oval at Nashville. That might be interesting. Open Series at Indianapolis on the oval. Might do that one maybe. I don't know. Depending on how many cars are entered into that one. Let's see. Road racing otherwise. I already mentioned the Road America. Tsukuba circuit, the Mustang and the mixed series with the Mustang and the Mazda MX-5 at Tsukuba circuit. That's a fun small road course. Should be interesting there. Got the fixed Sprint Formula One series at Indianapolis road course. might be interesting. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting choices here this week on iRacing. The Indy Pro 2000s at Iowa Speedway, that might be an interesting one. Yeah, so yeah, definitely always a lot of choices to go around in iRacing, a lot of different classes to compete in. So yeah, definitely have to go around and try all these races and everything, and try to win or get a good finish, and just try to race. That's why we do it. That's why I do it, just to have fun, get the feeling of racing when actually have a real racing car, or racing job, like all these other guys, and you want to try to be like them, I guess, and just have fun. So that's what it's all about. So yeah, that's this week on iRacing and what we'll be planning to do. I guess the Open Wheels 500 is this weekend. If people want to watch that, they'll be streamed on YouTube, I think, and I think on Race Pro or whatever, it's Race Spot TV. So go watch that if you're interested. Yeah, I'm not entered this year, but I might tune in if I have time just to see. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. It should be an interesting race. Yeah, that's yeah, I think that's all I got this week for sim racing. Yeah, of course, close that show now. Start off with, of course, you can follow my Twitter, JP Huffine. Go on there, see the takes I have on the Jags, Formula One, NASCAR, everything else. See, what else I got to say on there, and gather any information you want off of my timeline, or interact with me or whatever. Follow the Twitch stream, Twitch TV/usailor2, and go watch how I did at Talladega this week, and all my other highlights from throughout the year on there. Then, of course, go on the YouTube channel and subscribe to our page, where we have the podcast in video form, and go in there and watch or listen with the video in the background. Go in there and subscribe at Gripster Podcast on YouTube and see our stuff there. So yeah, of course, always glad to do it with you this week. Closing out the year, should be interesting the rest of the year in football, and closing out the year in racing. So yeah, it's been a good season, and of course, always glad to do it with you, man.
Absolutely, brother. I'm glad that we get to do this, and we got to go and we'll get it a little different than what we usually do with that list. So Philadelphia loses a game, so that's something. The Washington General Commander Redskins won against the Philadelphia Eagles, and now the Minnesota Vikings are tied for the number 1 seed in the NFC. So that's something to look at. It's been a topsy-turvy week. As it stands right now, I mean, in our fantasy football league, the top 4 are pretty set. Myself and Manny are tied. Steve takes 2 points, so he's 9 and 11, 2 wins. Josh, that's a rough week for your situation. Vic is actually tied with you now. So I'm 13. Okay. So now, all right. It's interesting. Your record overall in the fantasy league is actually 5-5, but your record and dual record is tied with Vic, who started,
Yeah, we have
0-5.
poor points scored.
Which is, so the reality of the world is the dual record determines any tiebreakers and all that. So right now, I kind of need some wins here. We got 4 weeks to go in the regular season. As it stands, I have a 1-game lead on Steve in the duel. And in regards to, he's ahead of me a game. So I have a 1 game ahead of him in the duel, and he's a 1 game ahead of me he's tied with me in overall in the, so right now you'd be the one that gets screwed. If things kind of hold up the way they are, Joe would make it because you'd get bumped out by Manny. Because for as bad as Manny's team has ended up doing, he's 8th and you're 5th. So we'll see what happens. It could. There's 4 weeks to go. So
Yeah.
Trade deadline. There's still 2 weeks to go in the trade deadline for us relative to other leagues. So maybe Luke, maybe some other teams are willing to make some moves. But you can follow us at GripsterPod on Twitter. You can follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. Follow Josh JP Huffine and USailor2 on his Twitch stream. Follow us on any place you can find podcasts. And we'll be back next week for episode 145 of the Gripster podcast to get into pre-Thanksgiving celebrations and what we're grateful for. We always do that here as the kettle's going off over there. We'll go over what happened at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. We'll get into Formula 2. We'll also discuss the other racing series that are going on. And we'll talk about Week 11 in the NFL, talk about Thanksgiving, and we could probably do a segment after the Formula One for what we were grateful for this year in motorsports, since we're basically done. The motorsport season, essentially, outside of a couple of big races, is done after the start of December of the supercars. So I don't know if Formula E starts their championship in December. I don't think they do, but so we'll talk all about that here on the GSP. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care. God bless. Be nice to one another. Hopefully I'll have some positive announcements in regards to my bowling game. It hasn't been pretty so far this year. I'm trying to make some changes there, trying to make some changes in general. Josh can win a race. I can go and bowl a big one. And we won't wreck any Hertz rental cars like Uncle Bobby did, which Steve Shunk went and showed the letter that was sent to Uncle Bobby. So check out my Twitter feed if you want to get more interest in that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting us. It's a passion project for us. It's something that we do. Just talk about racing, and it's nice and loose. I have fun. We have fun. We're friends. We're bros. And we're going to continue doing this for a while. I don't care. We're going to keep on doing this. I'll be old and going to need somebody. I'm going to need a voice gimmick to do it. I'll keep on doing it because I love this shit. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care. God bless. Goodbye.